All right, let's get right into it. Have you ever felt like you're just a slow learner? What if I told you there's a system to learn so fast it honestly feels unfair? Well, that's exactly what we're breaking down today. It's called the 3C protocol. So the guy who came up with this, his story is pretty incredible. He says, I grew up a poor kid in Mumbai who struggled in school. Today, I am an MIT grad. It's not because I'm smarter, but because I learned how to learn faster than everyone around me. I mean, think about that. From a kid struggling in school all the way to MIT. He says the secret wasn't being a genius, it was learning how to learn. And that's what this is all about.
Okay, so what is the secret? Really, how does someone make a leap like that? It's a huge question, right? Especially now, when everything is changing so incredibly fast.
And here's the answer, and it's a big one. The only real edge you have anymore is how you learn. I mean, with AI and everything, information is everywhere. It's cheap. But your ability to actually absorb it, to turn information into a real skill, that's the new superpower. But before we can build up this new system, we got to tear down the old one. We need to figure out why the way most of us try to learn, well, it just doesn't work.
Okay, here's a really cool way to think about it. Picture your prefrontal cortex, that's the part of your brain doing all the heavy lifting with new ideas, as a tiny little 4-ounce bowl. Seriously, that's it. So, what happens when you try to pour a whole gallon of information into that tiny bowl? Yeah, it just spills everywhere, right? That's cramming. It's why you feel so drained and remember almost nothing. Your brain just wasn't built for that.
Now this is where it gets kind of wild, and it's the opposite of what most of us were taught. We think if learning feels hard, we must be doing it wrong. But neuroscience says nope. There's this thing called the generation effect. And it basically means the more you have to struggle to pull an answer out of your own head, the deeper that memory gets burned in. Your brain doesn't hate the struggle, it actually craves it. All right, so if cramming is bad and productive struggle is good, how do we actually do that? How do we structure it? Well, that's where the solution comes in. Let's talk about the 3C learning protocol.
It's really simple, and it's built on these 3 pillars. Number 1, compress the map. Number 2, compile the work. And number 3, consolidate the gains. So let's start at the top with that first C, compress.
Okay, step 1, compress the map. And let's be clear, this is not about shoving more stuff into your head. It's the exact opposite. It's about understanding more by using less. The perfect way to get this is to think about a chess grandmaster, someone like Magnus Carlsen. He doesn't look at a board and see 32 separate pieces. His brain has seen so many games that it's compressed all that info into chunks, into patterns. He sees the whole picture, and that's what compression is. It's taking a ton of scattered ideas and shrinking them down into a few really powerful patterns that your brain can easily carry around. And why do we have to do this? Well, it turns out our brains have a pretty shocking limitation. Research shows we can only really hold about 4 new ideas in our head at one time. That's it. Any more than that, and we start dropping things. So compression isn't just a neat trick. It's the only way to get around that fundamental bottleneck. So how do you actually do it? Here are 3 practical tactics. First up is selection. The 80-20 rule. Find the 20% of the material that's going to give you 80% of the results. Next is association. You have to connect the new idea to something you already understand. It's like giving your brain a hook to hang it on. And finally, there's chunking. That just means boiling it all down into a super simple model, maybe a metaphor, something you can easily remember. Okay, so you've got your compressed map, you've got the core ideas, now what? Well, now you have to turn that knowledge into an actual usable skill. And that brings us to our second C, compile the work. And this is so important because just knowing stuff isn't enough. Just look at the story of Kim Peek, the real person who inspired the movie Rain Man. This man could memorize thousands of books word for word. His memory was unbelievable. But he couldn't handle basic everyday tasks. And that's the whole point, isn't it? Memory alone is not mastery. Just hoarding information isn't learning. And that is the trap that 99% of people fall right into. So to avoid that trap, to actually compile your knowledge into a real skill, you need 3 things. Think of it like a little system: the timer, the test, and the tools. Let's start with the timer. So your brain has this natural rhythm. It's called an ultradian cycle. It can go hard, super focused for about 90 minutes. But after that, it needs a break, maybe 20 minutes of rest. So what's the practical takeaway for you? Simple. Look at your calendar for the week. Find just 1 or 2 of those 90-minute windows. Block them off for deep learning, and then protect that time like it's gold. Okay, next up is the test. And we have to ditch the old way of doing things. You know, where you learn for weeks and then there's one giant, terrifying exam at the end? That's just a terrible way to learn. The new way is so much smarter. You just learn a little bit, and then you test yourself on it right away. Then you learn the next little bit, and you test that. It creates this constant feedback loop that keeps you engaged and actually learning.
But what does testing actually look like? Well, here are 3 amazing tools you can use. First, for anything physical like learning an instrument, try the slow burn. This means you practice so incredibly slowly that you can focus on every tiny little movement. It feels weird, but it works. Then for performance skills like public speaking, you need immersion. You have to get out of the practice room and into the real world. And finally, for any concept or idea, the absolute best tool is teach to learn. Try explaining it to a friend or honestly, even just to your wall. If you can explain it simply, you know you've really got it.
All right, you've compressed the information, you've compiled it through practice, but there's one last crucial piece. This is the step that makes all that hard work actually stick in your brain. It's step 3, consolidate the gains.
I just love this analogy. A farmer knows you can't just plant and harvest all day, every day, all year long. The soil has to rest to get its nutrients back. Well, your brain is exactly the same. Rest isn't you being lazy. Rest is when your brain is doing some of its most important work. It's locking in everything you just learned.
And this happens on a few different levels. First, you've got micro rest. I'm talking about just a 10 or 20-second pause after a burst of intense learning. And get this, scientists found that in that tiny pause, your brain replays what you just learned at 20 times the normal speed. How cool is that? Then there's macro rest. That's your 20-minute break after that 90-minute focus session. And of course, the big one, the ultimate consolidator, is just a good night's sleep. That's when your brain does its final sweep and stores everything away for the long term.
So there you have it. You put those 3 C's together, compress, compile, and consolidate, and you have a complete, powerful new system for learning. But to really make it work, you also need to adopt a bit of a new mindset.
So let's wrap up with 3 final rules to live by. Number 1, stop racing other people. Seriously, it's a game you will never ever win. 2, be the performer, not the critic. When you're learning, you have to be in it. You can't be standing on the sidelines judging yourself at the same time. And last, number 3, give yourself time. Learning isn't a straight line up. It has its own rhythm. You just have to trust the process.
Because really, at the end of the day, the only person you're competing against is the person you were yesterday. You have the system now. It's all yours. So the only question left is, what are you going to learn next?